Good morning, everyone. Jeff is just on his way up, and we're going to do the planters this morning. Thought I'd give you a quick view of the garden. The planter boxes are getting ready to be planted. The containers have all been cleared out. And today we're going to do the spring containers because it is a beautiful day on this gorgeous sunny Sunday. And we're going to enjoy some time together on Facebook Live. Here comes Jeff. Ready to do the planters. We cleaned them out yesterday and they're ready to go.
Good morning. Welcome to Let's Get Growing. It is spring today. We've got a beautiful day brewing, beautiful weather coming, and we're going to get our spring planters done. So we cleaned them out yesterday, got rid of all our winter stuff, but for several years now we've left the cedar rails in. The cedar rails give a nice bit of height, because in these big planters I want to have height all the time. So I use the cedar rails, and the big benefit of the cedar rails has been usually right here hangs a suet feeder for woodpeckers. And the woodpeckers use the cedar rails as a staging ground to take turns at the suet feeder. We get downies, we get hairy woodpeckers, we even get red-bellied woodpeckers right at our kitchen window. And they love these poles. You can actually see they're actually chomping away at these ones because they use these poles. If there's a seed they can't get open, they'll wedge the seed in the cracks and then peck away at the seed until they get it open. So it's really fun to watch them. But I leave them in year-round as my upright center. I'll show you around. You'll see the other ones a little bit later. So we've cleaned our planter out. We dug our spring bulbs. And by that I mean when we do our spring bulbs for our planters, we plant them into our hanging baskets in the fall, bury them in the garden. We dug these up yesterday. They're way ahead of what they normally are at this time of the year, but that's okay. You can see we've got a great mix of bulbs in here, and they're going to come up naturally now in the planters and look like they were planted there year-round. Of course, we can't do that in our climate. We can't plant bulbs into our planters in the fall. Too much freeze thaw, too much really cold weather. It makes it really unreliable for bulbs. So we do it this way. You can see this was buried in the ground up to about here. So the bulbs are still a bit yellow, but that's okay because we're not going to see them much at this time. We're going to get out here. I've pre-measured that my hanging baskets or pots that I use will fit in the planters. But we got to do a little bit of excavating. So we're going to get right in there. We're going to dig out a bunch of soil.
Now, Jeff, for people that don't know, those bulbs were underground, so they're very yellow, the foliage.
Yeah.
Once it's exposed to sunlight, will it turn green?
Well, you will. And you can actually even see right here, there's a couple of tips that were exposed to the sun already, just where they were buried, and they're already green. So the rest will green up. But I'm also going to bury this pot quite deeply, so the bulbs won't be showing much yet. We're going to remove a bunch of the soil here. And these pots sort of just fit in front of the cedar rails. It's amazing that they're completely thawed, which is awesome. Makes it a lot easier. I hate doing these and hitting frozen chunks down at the bottom. Go down quite deep. We're going to plant these quite deeply. All right, so there we go. we've got our hole dug. Set that soil aside. So we then take our hanging basket. Gonna pop the hangers off. I use the hanging baskets over pots because I leave the hangers sticking out of the ground. Then I know exactly where the planters are in the spring. One year we didn't do that, and I ended up digging right through the pots and right through the bulbs. It was kind of a mess. So we've got our selection here. So now we're just going to drop them into the center. And then we're just going to fill them right back up again with the soil I just took out. Of course, we're not going to use as much soil. So we've got a bit extra, so that's fine. Lots of planters to fill. Take our soil, mix it around. We've got our bulbs in there. Now they're right about the height of where they would be if they're in the ground. So we break up that soil. There we go. So that's going to be the spectacular center of our planters. Now what we do with these, to get the look we want, we pick the color scheme we want, and then we plant, or we select an early tulip, a daffodil that is early, and a hyacinth. If you mix those three together, they will all overlap bloom at the same time. So you want to complement each of them with the colors.
No.
The other thing, we've thrown in another tulip in there, in a bit of a contrasting color to add a little bit of just a little bit of a pop to it. And I think there's some muscari put in there for a bit of nice soft blue. Muscaris are great bulbs to force. And you see how full that pot was? We probably put 30 to 40 bulbs in a 12-inch basket. So we want maximum impact, and so we use a lot of bulbs in there. After the fact, the bulbs can be put out into the garden, so you're not wasting, a year's worth of bulbs or wasting money on them, because the bulbs work well in the garden later on. So that's where they'll go. But we're at this stage now. So we remember that our color scheme, and we've got tulip or daffodil, pansies, that's what they're called. Pansies to match our color scheme of our bulb. So we've got a nice light blue, soft yellow, and then we've got a touch of burgundy in there with a tulip. So we're going to put a touch of a burgundy pansy in there. So in this size pot, this is about I don't know what these are, 20, 24-inch pots roughly. We've got our 12-inch basket, and then we've got our pansies, and we're going to use about 15 pansies in here. So we bought a tray of pansies in 4 packs in March, the 1st of March. Popped them into 4-inch pots and kept them growing in an unheated cold frame. So these pansies have been well hardened off. In fact, even last night, they were down to about -4. It was quite chilly last night, even though we're getting into spring. So we just randomly now place the pansies in. There's always a bit of extra soil because these don't fully root out, but that's okay.
I want to remind people that when they go to look for their bulbs in the fall, ideally, if you have a color scheme, you should do it as early as possible.
Yeah. Definitely get your bulbs early. We didn't plant these early. These were one of the last things we planted up. But we had the color scheme picked out well in advance. So keep going there. Always a bit of excess soil, so that's fine.
The earlier you buy your bulbs, the better selection you have.
Well, you know what, and that goes for everything. The pansies, too. We don't grow these pansies ourselves. Pansies are a really slow plant to do from seed. Most of the growers start their pansies in December. They seed them in December, grow them through until March, and then they're out for sale. So they fill up greenhouse bench space when there's nothing else going on, which is great. But you know, you can't just buy seed in January and have March pansies. They just take longer than that. So we're going to keep popping our pansies in here.
Look at you.
Hey, Lupin.
Get a white dog, they said.
Yeah, Lupin went for a swim in the pond this morning already, I think. That's okay. You get these yellow ones in here. And then, like I mentioned, we've got a little bit of burgundy as a hint in here. Not much, just one tulip. That will give a bit of a contrasting color. So we're going to pick that up with some of the pansies. Now, you see where I put the bulbs in? There is still space, and I can take a pansy and I can tuck them in here in amongst the bulb shoots. And they will all still come up through the pansy, and the pansy will be fine. No problem to do that. A few more pansies in. Any questions this morning while we're popping these
Sure.
things in?
There's a couple of questions.
All right.
One, Betty would like to know, when can she plant her new peony roots outside, and how deep should she plant them?
Well, get them out there. I would get them out there now. Weather looks great. There's really no reason to not plant them now. We've got some new peonies sitting inside waiting to come out as well. We'll get them out. The one thing that's very important to remember with peonies is that the big pink buds are no more than an inch below the surface of the soil. Biggest thing with peonies. People will always say, oh, you know, when you transplant a peony or when you plant a peony, it takes 4 years for it to bloom. Only if you plant it too deep. Peonies are very sensitive to how deep they're planted, and they have to be in very shallow with the buds. Now, the big, thick roots can go deeper. That's okay. But the buds must be close to the surface.
And Betty wanted to let you know that her short teddy bear sunflower seeds are about an inch tall after 10 days. She's going to wait to sow the taller ones for another week or two.
I would wait to sow the taller ones because they get tall very quickly. So they can be a little hard to manage indoors. So, all right, we've done the pansies now. Now, we've still got a fair bit of soil left visible. So what we do now is we take a tray of lettuce that we have grown. This is lettuce we've sowed about 6 weeks ago or so. Put into 2.5-inch pots. We've got good-sized heads of lettuce. And we take that lettuce and we now fill in the gaps. Lettuce is extremely cold hardy. These ones came out of the greenhouse barely even hardened off, and they were outside when it was -3 last night, and they're doing fine. We usually try to pick a lettuce that has some good foliage color. So this is Yugoslavian red, and you can see it's got lots of speckling of red, and that's going to intensify as the plants are out in the sun. We've got our Yugoslavian red. Makes a great filler in the planters because it's just a nice leafiness that hides their space while the pansies are filling in. And again, you can get right in amongst the bulbs because the bulbs will still come up through it, so you don't need to worry about that. So there we go. And you can see how those lettuces just add more to it to fill in. So we've got some Yugoslavian red. The other one I like to grow for my containers is Australian yellow leaf. It's a leaf lettuce, and they look a little green here, but these will be as chartreuse as these pansies once they're out in the sun a bit more. So it makes an excellent filler as well. And if you start to get a little too full, that's okay. You can always readjust. So we'll pack that in there. Tuck those pansies in. We can actually throw in some more lettuce there. So I'm not going to keep putting lettuces in because that's boring to watch that. So the next thing we do, we've got our lettuce mix with pansies. We've got some uprights from our cedar rails. We're going to have bulbs that are going to come up to about this high. But we want to add a little more oomph to it, a little more color. So we've taken out our dogwood that we used in the winter containers, and our dogwoods are still looking fantastic. So what we're going to do with these, because I don't want them 4 feet tall, we're going to take our dogwoods and we're going to cut them down. So out of each 4-foot dogwood, you can actually get several dogwood sticks. Now, you'll have a good tip on one of them, and on the others, you're going to have a little cut mark. So to hide the cut mark, we just get some dirt in our hands and rub it over that pure white cut mark. It just hides it a little bit. So then we're just going to go in with our dogwood, and we can do it and push it in sort of anywhere through the planter. Again, we'll take, maybe just get 2 out of this one.
Come here. Sit. Sit. Sit.
And then we just are using, again, those nice branches that are looking really good. Just the added benefit of using these branches again, and they're so healthy, is they just might root on you. And then you'll get yourself... Lupin, here's some please. Come here. Here. Thank you. Dirty up those cut ends. And again, we can just keep adding. Until we've got a nice structure of those. And then the other ones that I saved, I love these. These are the fantail willows. And they're just crazy, sort of Dr. Seuss looking things. And we'll just tuck those in just for a little bit more upright. It's really tricky to get upright for spring containers. So I like to reuse our branches and things that we used for the winter because it gives us a little bit more. So we're not quite finished planting this one, but if Laura swings over to this one, we have this one all finished. So we've got our pansy layer with our lettuce, Everything looks great. It's all set to go. They're going to match. They're going to look really, really good and give a great spring show. The nice thing about using the lettuce and pansies is that after the bulbs are done, and the bulbs are going to give us 2 to 3 weeks of good color, but after the bulbs are done, we've still got the pansy lettuce mix. So we'll keep that growing until about the end of May when we're ready to do our summer planters. And the benefit of using the lettuce and pansies is that when you're ready to do your summer planters, you have your salad ready for dinner because you just harvest all that lettuce, harvest the pansy flowers, and make yourself a salad for dinner that night. So I'm just going to do one more little thing on here. And I noticed a couple of the pansies had flowers that were finished. So to keep pansies looking really good for a really long time, you need to deadhead regularly. So I've got a finished pansy flower here. And you can see it's all curled up and everything.
No.
Now, you might be inclined to just pull that off. But, like with other plants when you're deadheading, you leave the forming seed pod there. So you want to just go down there with a little pair of scissors or just pinch and get out that whole stem when you pinch the pansies. And if you do that once a week, your pansies will stay looking good for a really long time. If you plant your pansies in afternoon shade, you'll even get them going for a longer time. And they'll actually keep going as long as the summer doesn't get too hot. So if you like your pansies, keep them looking good. Pinch them back as needed if they get too big and straggly. And they'll last you a really long time. So there's our spring planters. We've done the bulb thing for years this way. We love it. It's a great way to get bulbs into your containers. We do it with the baskets, like I mentioned. But we'll also do individual bulbs in 4-inch pots. And then we can tuck them into other awkward planters that, can't take a big basket. So it works really, really well. If you didn't do this year, go to your garden centers. Look for pots of forced bulbs that are still very short. You can get daffodils, hyacinths, tulips now. Just look for ones that are still fairly short. And now you can do the exact same thing with them because they're kept quite cold when they're being forced. So they're pretty hardy right when you put them outside. We got any questions for today, Laura?
A couple more. Sophie's wondering whatever happened to the wave pansies. Like the wave petunias, but pansies, she never sees them for sale anymore.
The wave pansies, if you can find them, are really fantastic pansies. They're vigorous, they're trailing, so they create like a ground cover in big pots, or you can use them in hanging baskets. I think the problem with them, maybe for our area, is that people can't get through the fact that pansies are just for spring. Like I said, if you put pansies in afternoon shade, pinch them accordingly, take care of them a little bit, you can get a lot of pansies that will last right through the summer. So I think the waves, just with growers, people don't want to buy pansies in June because they think they're not going to last. So I think that's the problem. The wave pansies are still out there if you can find them, and they're fantastic plants.
Bonnie has mentioned your yellow discs in your planter, that she thought they were pretty cool.
These are probably one of the coolest garden ornaments that I've ever bought. They're very simply plexiglass discs, but the neat thing about them is that the top of them collect the sunlight almost and shoot it out these edges. So even if it's a very dull day, these edges are just like somebody turned a light bulb on. They're so amazing. I've had these in the garden for years. I always have them in one of the planters. I just love them. When I first got them, they were really hard to find. Now you can get them in Canada. right from the manufacturer. And the name of the manufacturer is Cazador del Sol. So it's, Laura will type it into the chat. Cazador del Sol, you can get them in Canada. They come in several different colors in the round discs, and you can get wavy ones and flower-shaped ones. There's a lot of different ones, but I've always just loved these. Because even on a really dull day in the winter, when the sun is not shining and it's very cloudy, the light just beams out of these things. I just love them.
Even with the snow on them.
Even covered in snow, the light still beams out of the edges of these things. They're fantastic. I've just enjoyed them ever since I first saw them. So that's what those are. And again, here's, our big cedar rail. So even as I've taken everything out of this planter, the cedar rails with the plastic discs still look good. We're going to put some pansies in here too, just to finish that container off. He's right on the patio for the summer. But I love the height that the cedar rails have given in the planter.
All right, that's the end of our questions.
All right. It's a beautiful day. Get out and garden, and we'll see you next time on Let's Get Growing.